The following conversations are taken from our channel membership exclusive weekly live show that we do on Saturdays from 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time to 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time called Members Talk Live. Find out how you can become a member and appear on the show. All of the information is down in the description below, as well as all the links to the channels of today's guests. Check them out, and I hope to talk with you very soon. Let's just start with this. Let's just start with the biggest rumor I think that's out there right now regarding Spider-Man 4. Because with Spider-Man 4 in the MCU, a lot of discussion has been around, first of all, when are they going to officially announce Spider-Man 4 that it's going into production? I think that there's been little inklings of Zendaya coming back and they're ramping up, or even that they have a story written, I think was out there at one point. But there hasn't really been an incredible amount of movement on Spider-Man 4 besides rumors of Kevin Feige and Marvel want to do a grounded story, and Sony wants to do another multiverse story, and they're button heads. They can't decide. But a big question is, who's going to direct it? Because John Watts, he did the first 3 movies in the trilogy. He's apparently not wanting to come back. He's moving on to other things that he's doing. So a big speculation going around right now is that Sam Raimi, who you probably recognize the name because he did 3 Spider-Man films before, and in fact, they're actually back in theaters right now, so the timing is perfect, that Sam Raimi is being discussed to do Tom Holland's Spider-Man 4, not Tobey's. This comes to us from not the most reliable source, but a source that in the past has been mixed on getting things right and wrong. This comes to us from the world of Real. And the narrator writing says, "This morning I was told that Sam Raimi is now in contention to direct Spider-Man 4. That's right, Raimi, who directed the first 3 original Spideys back in the aughts, is in the running. No formal offer has been given to Raimi, but there have been talks, and it might all depend on whether Raimi's busy schedule permits it. He's attached to direct Send Help, a horror thriller, but that one might be put in the back burner for Spidey 4. All right, so let's talk about this for a little bit, because it is interesting to me, Sam Raimi doing Spider-Man 4, and I actually don't think it's that crazy of a rumor out at the moment, because he is back in the fold with Marvel. You know, he did Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness, made that movie like $950 million. So, and that movie was kind of controversial and a little bit mixed between fans. So, even a movie that's not the most well received still can make that much money. If you put him on Spider-Man again, I think it's a guaranteed hit, maybe even a guaranteed $1 billion. Who even knows? As well as along with him doing Spider-Man 4, you know, there's been a lot of talk, mostly from the Sandman actor, Thomas Hayden Church, that he's heard that Sam's doing Spider-Man 4. He's heard that Sam is doing another Spider-Man. And we all kind of assumed that meant, oh, Sam Raimi is going to be doing Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 4, his unseen film that he was working on back in like 2008. Well, maybe they're talking about this Spider-Man 4. Maybe Thomas Hayden Church heard about Spider-Man 4, and this was actually what the discussions were. I'm very curious to hear what you guys think of Sam Raimi possibly coming back to Spider-Man, but doing a different iteration than what he did in the early aughts. I'll start with you, Michael. Sam Raimi for Spider-Man 4, but Tom Holland's version. How does that sit with you?
I'm all for it, man. Sam Raimi, I adore. Okay, I obviously the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. It means the world to me. Love the first one. I just saw it in theaters on Monday. Still holds up even for some of the PlayStation 1 CGI graphics. Love Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 3, in my opinion, is a misunderstood film, and I am very excited to do a video about why that movie is misunderstood. So I'm all for it. I mean, Sam Raimi is a phenomenal director. Very rarely has he made an awful film. Even like Oz the Great and Powerful was still okay, but I'm so all for it, man. I think what he did with Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness was really cool, even though basically that was just an Evil Dead 4 movie disguised in a Doctor Strange film. But like I said, man, I'm all for it, man. If it is true, I'll tell you this. If it is true, they need to give Sam Raimi full creative control, because that's what made the other Spider-Man films so great, because he had all the creative control except for a little bit of Spider-Man 3. So let him have it. Just let him have it.
I mean, you got a good point there with Sam Raimi being able to just like have full control, because I think that's what he got in Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness a little bit. Because Kevin Feige has come out and said that Sam Raimi was like one of the only directors where he could just leave him alone, just put him on set and trust that he was doing well with the project. He didn't really have to check in with Sam. And Kevin Feige and Sam Raimi are very good friends. I mean, Kevin Feige got his start in X-Men and then moved on to Spider-Man. And so they've been friends for a very long time. And you got Amy Pascal as well in the mix there too. So Ryan, you hear this? You hear that Sam Raimi could be doing Tom Holland Spider-Man 4. Now we've seen what he did with Spider-Man in the early 2000s with Tobey Maguire. Does his style of filmmaking translate to Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man in your opinion?
It's certainly different. John Watts is definitely a different style, but I don't know. It's interesting that you bring up about Sam Raimi and his control over the Doctor Strange film. It's like, because I don't know, I reviewed it a few years back, and I don't know, it felt like Sam Raimi was directing with one hand tied behind his back. And to be fair, that's kind of how I feel like a lot of these big name directors are with their like from like Taika Waititi. If you've seen like Jojo Rabbit, watching like say Thor Ragnarok, one of his better received MCU Marvel movies, like it feels like he's not allowed to let his freak flag fly. And I don't know. It's like, again, like you said, if Sam Raimi has full control, I'm interested. But then again, if he had full control for Doctor Strange, then I don't know. Of course, I mean, it's worth noting that Sam Raimi's one true love is Spider-Man, and that's kind of what happened with Venom, in that he didn't really understand the character, and this is himself admitting as such, and so the character kind of suffered a bit for that. So who knows? Maybe being in more familiar territory with Spider-Man and having as much control as he did with the Doctor Strange movie, as you know, he said. So yeah, maybe it could work. Maybe it might not. That's kind of my feelings.
Yeah, I think full control might be the wrong word, but I think what he's allowed to have his imprint on Doctor Strange for sure, because Doctor Strange, like Michael mentioned, was kind of like an Evil Dead version of a Marvel movie, and there was a lot of Sam Raimi-isms in Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness, which, if you're a Sam Raimi head, you probably absolutely loved. I like Sam Raimi well enough. I think he's a very good director, so I really enjoyed seeing his flair put on Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness. But T, does that flair translate to Tom Holland Spider-Man? Because we've had 3 movies now with Tom Holland Spider-Man. He's been very defined, and his Spider-Man is defined very different than Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. Do you see that? Do you see this director's style working for what we've got set up for Spider-Man in the MCU thus far?
I do, and I just want to say, poor Thomas Hayden Church, because like if he had this mixed up and he thought that, oh man, Spider-Man 4 and I might be involved. Oh, not my Spider-Man. Oh, the other Spider-Man. Even though he wasn't part of Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man either, but that's neither here nor there. I think this really does lend to Spider-Man 4 because the way they ended No Way Home. Like he's in a different place. He's older now. He's gonna be like he's being poised to lead the Avengers. So now he has to grow up, right? He can't be that plucky kid. He can't be the young, carefree Spider-Man. He's still gonna be that. He's still gonna have his quips when he fights whoever he's fighting. Which once again, Craven's Last Hunt. It was right there for us, but Sony.
I just
being
read that
Sony.
comic. It is excellent.
Yes, it is.
So good.
It was right there for us, Spider-Man all alone. But I think Sam Raimi would do really well with whatever they're going to do with Spider-Man 4. I don't know which direction they're going to go in because of how they ended No Way Home. They've kind of painted themselves in box themselves in a corner, because like, who do you use now? You can't use Craven. Like, who do you want to use? Rhino? Like, I mean, Spider-Man has a lot of great villains, but the great ones, Doc Ock, Green Goblin, the Hobgoblin, like, do you go that way? That's really going to determine whether Spider-Man 4 is, an iconic movie or not. But Sam Raimi at the helm, Spider-Man 2 is one of my favorite superhero movies of all time. Like,
Same.
Doc Ock was amazing. Like,
Yeah.
such a great like villain hero arc in that movie. Like Sam Raimi can do it. He just needs the right villain. He needs creative control like he had in Spider-Man 2, and I think it'll work. I think it'll be actually a home run.
I mean, looking back on Craven's Last Hunt, I'm actually kind of glad they didn't do it, because now that I've read the comic, I love in the comic that Peter's at a stage where he's kind of dealing with his mortality and his fearing death, and then Craven is at the end of his life and he doesn't fear death at all. He just wants to accomplish the last thing that he can and that he could never do in life before he's gone. And I thought that was a really great contrast throughout the entire comic. So if they are going to do Craven's Last Hunt, I want him to be older. Like Tom Holland's at a point in his Spider-Man career where I don't think he's there for Craven's Last Hunt. If they were to do like an Amazing Spider-Man 3 or honestly, I think Craven's Last Hunt should be a trilogy. I think Craven's Last Hunt is something that you build up to. You have Craven and Spider-Man throughout a number of movies facing off against each other, and then you build up to Craven's Last Hunt. I just don't know if there's a version of that comic that will be satisfying at where Tom Holland and even Tobey Maguire are in their Spider-Man journeys. But going back to Sam Raimi with Spider-Man 4, it does bring up a little bit of speculation for me where it's like, we know that there's rumors that Kevin Feige and Marvel wanted to do a grounded Peter Parker on his own kind of story. And then Sony wants to do another multiverse movie that involves Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, all the Spider-Man together once again. Sam Raimi directing, I mean, that is one way you could really pull Tobey Maguire back into this thing. And Sam Raimi doing a Spider-Man movie, I would guarantee that he'd probably want to have Tobey Maguire involved some way or another. Could this be a compromise? Could this be Kevin Feige getting a director he really likes and trusts and a friend, as well as Sony maybe getting this new multiverse Spider-Man film that they want? I'll throw it to you first, Michael. Do you think that Sam Raimi coming on is an indication that we're going to get Tobey Maguire back in this movie with Tom Holland as well? Or do you think that Sam Raimi would be able to do it just Tom? Because we know that Bruce Campbell's going to be in it. Like that's a no-brainer. We know that Bruce Campbell's going to pop up in this.
Yeah, he has to.
He has to, regardless, right? So we know that Bruce Campbell will be there. Do we think Tobey will be there? Do you think that this is a way that Sony and Marvel have kind of compromised to do another multiverse story?
I don't know if Tobey will be there, as Spider-Man. Maybe he might show up in the background, because I think, unless they're going forward with another multiverse story, then there's a possibility that that might happen. But because I have heard different concepts that they wanted to do, they wanted to tackle down the symbiote story, from the alien suit comic. So they might do that, or they might do a multiverse. So if it's multiverse, Tobey will obviously be there, because Sam has expressed in so many interviews, because I watch everything with Sam, that him and Tobey are still very good friends. Yeah. And there was even an interview where they had asked him about Spider-Man 4, and I wasn't too sure if they were asking about Tom Holland Spider-Man 4 or Tobey Spider-Man 4, but Sam said you know what, I'm always down for it. Sam is absolutely open to the idea, whether Tobey would be a part of it or not. So there's a small chance that Tobey could be involved if Sam is a part of it. Only one can hope. Only one.
What do you think, T? Is this an indication that Tobey might be involved again in a Spider-Man 4 if Sam Raimi did this, or do you think that he would just strictly stay with Tom Holland and Bruce Campbell?
I hope he stays with just Tom Holland. I love Tobey Maguire. I love Andrew Garfield. But let No Way Home be special. Let's not oversaturate it with, now if they somehow got Miles Morales, Spider-Gwen in there, if they turn this into a Spider-Versal type thing, I might buy that because it's finally live action. But I don't want to see I don't want to see No Way Home again. It was special. It was a moment. Don't ruin that moment by continuing to do it. And Sam Raimi, I hope he knows that. If they just keep trying to milk that cow, at some point, it's like they said, superhero fatigue. It'll become Spider-Man fatigue. So that's my take on it. I'll watch it, of course, but I just don't think that's a good idea.
What do you think, Ryan? What do you think about that? Do you think Tobey will show up? Do you think it'll be multiverse? Do you think it'll be street level? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not feeling Tobey coming back. To sort of play off of T, it's you can't go home again. I'm not apologizing for that pun.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's, again, I like Tobey Maguire. He gave a good performance in No Way Home, but it's I don't know. What narrative ground is there left to cover at this point?
That's true.
I mean, but like T said, maybe get the Spider-Verse. I mean, heck, the actor who plays Miles Morales expressed some interest in playing a live action version of the character, it's like, okay, all right, let him in. Maybe get Hailey Steinfeld, Issa Rae, Oscar Isaac, maybe. Again, I could see that working out, but let's leave Tobey Maguire behind. With all love and respect to Tobey Maguire. Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Well, let's just take it to buy or sell, and we're going to do buy or sell a little bit differently. We're going to do buy or sell that we believe this rumor is true. Do we believe that Sam Raimi is actually in talks to do Tom Holland's Spider-Man 4? I'm going to start off. I don't buy it.
I do. Okay.
You're on the fence? Yeah. I don't buy it because I think that the source is just not reliable enough, and I think it is kind of playing off the fact that the Raimi Spider-Man films are back in theaters. It's kind of hot right now, and Raimi's been talking about Spider-Man 4 forever. I just don't know. I just don't think that this is actually going to happen. I think they're going to go a different direction. Plus,
Right.
I can't even think of an example of a director who did a set of films and then they rebooted that set of films, but they brought the same director who did the past movies for the reboot series. Like, I can't think of that ever happening. And I don't know, maybe I'm just like not well tuned in that, but I just think it's too out of the box. I don't think it would happen.
George Miller's a good example, rebooting his own franchise for Mad Max.
Is that a reboot or continuation?
So it's I thought, yeah.
Is it a continuation or reboot?
It's a continuation.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think
okay.
It's supposed to be a continuation.
but they had to recast because the old actors got too old.
Right.
Also,
so
it's a little confusing because the Furiosa movie is set 45 years. At least that's what the trailer said before the events of Fury Road. But it's like,
Right.
So how old is Max then? Because he's got to be pushing 90 then.
Yeah.
That's a good point. That is a good point.
They age
Again-
differently in the apocalypse.
Hey, again, this is no complaints about the Furiosa movie. I'm going to see it opening day, if
Me
not
too.
opening weekend. But still, it's just a little funny nitpick is all,
Right. No.
Well, if anyone could think of an example where a director came back to do another series after doing a past series, let us know in the comments. Unless, Ryan, you got one.
Alfred Hitchcock. I can't remember, but I think he did a remake of his own movie. Plus, there are a lot of silent film directors who remade their movies into talkies.
That's true.
Yeah.
I think, was it the 39 Steps that Alfred Hitchcock redid?
I
can't remember.
I can't say. I just remember encountering that fact. I don't remember which movie.
Yeah, that's probably the closest one that I could think of then. But yeah, I mean, we'll have to wait and see if this rumor ends up being true. The Ace Avenue's in here, by the way, guys. He said in a $2 super chat. Dude, thank you so much for that. You're already a member. You're already supporting the channel so much, man. I appreciate that. He says, "Sup, guys? Miss you guys. Hope to see you all soon." Yeah, Ace hasn't been able to make it to a couple of our shows, but he has told me that he wishes that he could be on a little bit more often, and he'll be back soon. Let's move on to Transformers 1, because they launched the first trailer for this from space. It was like this big gimmick, in my opinion.
What?
Yeah, did you see that? They did this whole thing where they did like a space launch, and they launched the trailer from space, and then they did like an introduction video from Chris Hemsworth and Brian Tyree Henry, but they were like not in space. I don't know. It was weird. It felt like a pretty big gimmick to me. But anyways, for Transformers 1 on Zach Milne Talks Live this past Wednesday, I was a little hyperbole not amped for this. Let's put it that way. I exaggerated how uninterested I was in this movie because I'm not like the biggest Transformers fan. I really only know the Transformers movies from the live action movies, the Bay movies, Bumblebee, Rise of the Beast. I never really got into the cartoon back for like when it like the 80s cartoon, because I wasn't even alive in the 80s, but I just never got into it even as a child. I watched a couple episodes here and there, but it wasn't really my thing. So they announced this new animated Transformers movie they're doing with Chris Hemsworth, with Brian Tyree Henry, with Scarlett Johansson. Great voice cast. But there was very little known about it except that it was going to be a prequel, and it was going to tell the story of Optimus Prime and Megatron before the war, when they were brothers, all this kind of stuff. So I wasn't interested in it, really. I didn't really care. I told people on the show the trailer needs to win me over. It's one of those trailers where I need to be proven wrong, or not proven wrong, but I need to be convinced that this is worth my time. So the trailer comes out. I put it on. It was a big pile of stuff I don't want to see. It was a big pile of stuff I'm not interested. Now
Shiznit.
Shiznit. Yeah, let's go with that one. If it was a dog, it'd be a Shih Tzu. Look, it's I don't want to be too harsh on it, honestly. I don't want to be too harsh on it because the trailer clearly made it apparent it's aimed for the younger audience, and it's aimed for those who like love the Transformers and love the Transformers lore. I mean, there's no humans apparently in this one. It's all going to be focused on the Transformers. Audiences have been calling for that for years, so I'm happy that people are getting that. The trailer starts, and I thought I was watching a trailer for a new Netflix kids TV show. I don't mean to be harsh. The animation does look good for what they're going for. It has that kind of look, that typical look that Netflix animated shows tend to have. That's what they kind of gave this. So immediately that's where I went. The jokes are so low bar. They are pretty cringy at times. They just play younger. For jokes. It felt like every single stereotypical young kids animated movie jokes in here. Like it felt like Mutant Mayhem. It felt like anything Christopher Miller and Lord do, which I love those guys. Like I love their brand of comedy, but this felt more like an impersonation of what they do, trying to hit what they do, but it didn't feel like what they do. And the whole time I was watching this trailer, I was just like, I was exaggerating a little bit on Zach Milne Talks Live about how uninterested I was in this, but now I can actually honestly say I'm not interested in this. To me, it's not that it didn't look good. It just didn't look like it was made for me personally. So I want to jump to you, T, because I'm pretty sure last time you told us that you did grow up with the Transformers and you are a big Transformers fan. So I honestly want to hear from you as a Transformers fan. How did this hit you? What does it look like? Does it look like it's matching up with the lore that you grew up with? Does it look like it's going in an interesting direction? What did you think of this trailer?
I enjoyed the trailer. I grew up with Transformers. I grew up watching the cartoon after I got out of school. Transformers, I think it was 86. Transformers the movie, Transformers the animated movie. I still cry when Optimus Prime died. It's one of my favorite. It's a terrible animated movie. Like it's so 80s, but it's so
aged
good.
Pretty bad.
Like it's, to me, like it's my childhood. So I love it. Optimus Prime dies. We get Rodimus Prime. We get all of the cool new action figures because that's all it was. It was to sell new toys. This one, I'm looking at it more of a lens as a dad. Like, so being able to take my son to go see Transformers 1, like it's definitely made for him. It's not made for me. It's not made for anybody probably over the age of 20. I would say 12 to 18 is,
I was going to say 20 is generous.
Okay, but it's not made for it's made for a younger audience. So I definitely would love, like, I'm gonna take my kids to go see it. It looks like something they would enjoy, like especially my son. He likes, beat 'em up stuff. Like, and this is gonna be that. It's gonna be explosions. It's gonna be funny. It's kids humor. Like it's not meant for us. Like everybody's kind of beating it up, and it's like it's just not meant for you. It's clearly a kids movie. It's not like they're not even trying to hide that. It's clearly a kids movie. They're trying to get more kids to go and see the movie, so the kids could in turn go and buy the toys for Christmas. So that's definitely what it's there for. And I mean, it looks harmless. It looks fun. Like I don't get too beat up on like the lore of the Transformers or robots that say more than meets the eye. Like it's there's no, the movies have already ruined it. Like if there were any lore, like they were around during King Arthur. Like we moved past lore. Like we moved past lore in Transformers because they've ruined every bit of any type of lore that was with each movie, giving us a different origin story of how the Transformers came to be. So I mean, it's something new. It's for the kids. So I'll be there day one.
Absolutely, man. I think that's beautiful. I think that's great. I was thinking when I was watching the trailer, like, this is definitely aimed for the younger audience, but I do think it's aimed for the younger audience, and I think the younger audience is going to eat it up. Because Transformers, that's always been their thing. They're made to sell the toys. That's always been why Transformers
Yeah.
content even exists, is for Hasbro.
Thank you, Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, for Hasbro to sell all those toys. And I honestly, if I was 10 years old, I'd probably eat this trailer up. I'd probably be super excited for it. But what do you guys think? What do you think, Ryan? I mean, you saw this trailer. Are you a big Transformers fan? Did this trailer work for your inner child? What did you think of it?
I mean, so again, I'm not like a huge into the lore guy, but I've seen all the live action movies. Well, most of them. I didn't see Transformers last night. I've seen the original animated film. I've seen some of the episodes again. So again, I'm mid-tier Transformers fan, but I did not. It's the voice cast. It's like, again, I'm not saying they gotta sound like ultra monotone robots, but it's like, couldn't they have added a little bit of synth to the voices? Or here's an idea: get an actual voice acting cast for the characters. Because I don't know, just hearing such clean voices, it reminds you that these are voices coming from a recording studio, not voices coming from characters.
Right.
And Keegan-Michael Key. Oof, I am not buying him as Bumblebee. He just, again, I know they're going for something different, but I feel like he's essentially just like, I don't know, Keegan-Michael Key. I like him on, the Key and Peele show, but I feel like everything else, he just gets into kind of this, okay, if we just give Keegan-Michael Key dialogue to spout off, he'll be funny. But no, you need actual good writing, and I don't think, at the very least, the trailer doesn't showcase any good dialogue for him.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, is this, are you showing us your best stuff in the trailer? Is this the best stuff that's going to be in the movie? Because if it is, I'm a little worried. Michael, I mean, you've got a son yourself, man. I mean, are you going to take him to see this? Do you think that this is going to be right up his alley there? How do you feel looking at this, like T, as a father? Because Ryan and I here, we're just mid-20s grumps. That's not my Transformers. Like,
right, fair enough.
Right.
What's
yeah.
your perspective on it, man?
Same with T. I mean, my son's 3 years old. So I have a feeling my son will probably be excited. He's getting at that age where, like, I've started to introduce him. Like, I introduced my son to the original 1990s live action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He seemed to really enjoy that, so he's definitely at that perfect age. And I'll see it. I mean, I'm not like a hardcore Transformers fan. I enjoy the first Michael Bay version because I remember seeing that in theaters as a kid, and I still have a lot of great memories. But those movies were just kind of narrowed down from less of the Transformers and more of just horny Shia LaBeouf just screaming all the time. But and then like the Mark Wahlberg ones, like I thought Age of Extinction was probably the worst they ever did. Last Night was also just kind of iffy. I liked Bumblebee a lot. Rise of the Beasts, I thought, was the first Transformers film where the human characters weren't annoying and useless. Like they actually had them doing stuff. And I even said in my Transformers Dark of the Moon review, where I talked about how my dream Transformers film, whether it's animated or live action, have it take place on Cybertron because nobody asked for human characters. Nobody. Very similar to Godzilla X Kong, when they were focusing on Kong more than the humans. I'm like, that's what we wanted. And when I heard that they were doing this for Transformers 1, because I didn't even know it was going to be animated, honestly, I just heard about it. So when I saw the trailer, I'm like, okay, it looks like a animated Nickelodeon show, just with an actual higher budget. So I don't know if it's really going to resonate with me. I think, like T said, I think it looks harmless enough. It doesn't look like a movie that's going to offend people, because it's not like the original Transformers films are seen as like something that could be next to Dune or like the Alien films or anything like that. I think it's just going to be a harmless film that people are literally going to forget about right when it comes out.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And like I said,
forgot
like
about it already.
I forgot about it already. Like, look, like I said, I don't want to be too harsh on it because it is clearly aimed at a younger audience. But there was kind of like, before the trailer came out, there was kind of this like question of, will this work for all audiences? Will this work for me? I doubted that it would. And after watching the trailer, I kind of feel like my doubts were justified. I really don't think that this is going to be for me. But I love that kids growing up will probably end up having huge nostalgia for this movie like 20 years from now. And the way that T loves that 80s movie, and it still has a special place in his heart, even though he said it himself, it's not a very good animated movie. I hope that this can be this for the younger audience, but for me personally, this trailer didn't win me over, and I'm really just not interested in seeing this when it comes out. So let's just take it to buy or sell. Do we buy or sell the first trailer for Transformers 1? And I'm just thumbs down. Yeah. That's how it worked out. I really wanted to come on here and be like, you know what? I talked crap on Zach Milne Talks Live, but hey, you know what? That trailer was awesome. I really enjoyed it, but it just, gotta be honest, didn't work for me. All right, moving on. Let's talk about this. Because this is something I don't think a lot of people are talking about this, and I'm kind of surprised people aren't talking about this because I actually think this is pretty cool. Steven Spielberg, come on, Steven Spielberg. You say the name, legend in Hollywood. He'll forever be. His legacy is sealed. He is forever a legendary figure in Hollywood. Let's get the Transformers out of here, and let's get the Steven Spielberg in here, who also produced Transformers films, so that kind of works out. But yeah, Spielberg. I mean, his legacy, it's sealed. He is a legend. He will forever be remembered as one of, if not the greatest director of all time. But Spielberg is also getting older. He's 77. We are approaching, dude, it makes me so sad to think about it, but we are approaching the years where we are going to lose John Williams. We are going to lose Steven Spielberg. We are going to lose Martin Scorsese. Like, it's going to happen in our lifetime. It kills me to think about it, but it's true. And the fact that these directors and the fact that John Williams is still working today is such a treat. It's such a pleasure. So anytime I get to hear that Spielberg or any one of these guys are working on something new, I just feel like so honored to get to be here for it. So we got some new information about what Spielberg is doing, and it looks like Spielberg is going to be leaving the adaptations for a little bit, and he's going to be creating a new original film based on UFOs. This comes to us from Screen Rant, and they say Steven Spielberg will return to science fiction with a new UFO movie. After directing his breakout thriller Jaws in 1975, Spielberg transitioned into directing one of the most acclaimed sci-fi films of all time, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He also directed other science fiction films, including E.T. the Extraterrestrial, War of the Worlds, and Ready Player One. Most recently, Spielberg helmed the 2022 film The Fabelmans, which is a semi-autobiographical account of the director's childhood and journey to become involved in the film industry. Per Variety, Spielberg will now be directing a UFO movie. Very little has been revealed about this movie, but it is confirmed that the sci-fi film is based on Spielberg's original idea, and the screenplay will be written by David Koepp. Further information surrounding story details, casting, release date, and title have yet to be announced, and that comes to us from Screen Rant. So, I mean, one of the things in there that gets me double excited. First of all, the fact that Steven Spielberg, he's got this original UFO. The first thing that I thought about was Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Classic.
And Spielberg, I mean, the last UFO thing he did was Indiana Jones and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Now, I like that movie. That's kind of a hot take on the channel. I like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Not many people do. Not many people like that movie. And that was kind of the last UFO movie that you can say Steven Spielberg did. So that doesn't sit well in a lot of people's mouths. But with that, regardless, you can't take away Encounters of the Third Kind. You can't take away E.T. Poltergeist is haunted, it's rumored that he secretly directed Poltergeist, but it kind of translates a little bit to an alien invasion movie in my mind. If you just swap out the aliens or swap out the ghosts with the aliens. So this is like right up Spielberg's alley. So the fact that it's original, the fact that this is his next project, because he has been doing a lot of adaptations. Aside from The Fabelmans, he did West Side Story, he did BFG, Ready Player One. Like, he's been doing a lot of adaptations. So to get an original idea from him really excites me. And the partnering up of David Koepp. Now, David Koepp is a busy man because he's not just working on the next Jurassic World movie. Apparently, he's also working on this next Spielberg movie. But they've made magic together with Jurassic Park in the past. So you get an original idea from Spielberg. You get him partnered up, penning the script with David Koepp. I'm really excited for this. Ryan, am I alone in that? Are you excited to check out this movie? What are your feelings about Spielberg doing an original UFO movie for his next project?
Well, I'm interested. I mean, I feel like in recent years, the alien subgenre has been, I I feel like it could use a new touch because it's maybe got a little stale. I feel like it got injected with some energy from Jordan Peele with Nope last year. People have compared Nope to a Spielberg-esque movie. So, like Spielberg making actual Spielberg making a UFO movie, it has potential.
What about you, T? What do you think about this? Do you think this is a good project for Spielberg to be working on next, or do you think he's exhausted his UFO storytelling in the past?
I mean, I'm all for an ET sequel, and by that I'm probably not. Like I don't like until you posted this. I've never thought of like what I'm not. I'm not gonna say I'm not a Steven Spielberg fan, but I'm not like a fan of him lately. Like he hasn't really done anything in the like I wasn't a big West Side Story fan. Ready Player One was pretty good, but that was like nostalgia bait. That was a huge nostalgic type film for me. But I mean, if the trailer's good, I'll go see it. But when I see a UFO movie, my brain just goes to Signs for some reason. And that's not a good place for me to go when I'm thinking of Alien. Like immediately when you say UFO, I just think of Signs. I think of somebody with aluminum foil hat and swinging a bat and killing the aliens with water. Like that's
and
where my mind
doors.
goes.
Their weakness is doors.
Yeah, like
man.
the alien subgenre, like you said, it is very dormant. It hasn't been a really good one since The Arrival. I think that was a fantastic.
Arrival was good.
Arrival was really good.
Yeah.
So it could definitely be done. And if anybody's going to do it, it would definitely be Steven Spielberg, as long as it has some heart to it. I mean, I just need to see a trailer, like see what it's all about, and then I might get up for it.
I personally really liked No One Will Save You from last year. I don't know if any of you guys caught that one.
I watched it. I watched it, and like midway through the movie, when I realized no one was talking, it was like, this is jarring. Like it was very jarring to me. And then it made me think of Silent Night, which is another terrible movie where no one speaks.
Did not like that.
No,
I thought it was all right. It's not good, but it's okay. It's
but the ending of No One to Save You was just very weird.
It was,
I think
it was trippy.
If they would have nailed the ending, because it really built up really like to this crescendo that just didn't get me where it needed to be. But I mean, once again, in Steven Spielberg's hand, it could definitely work. I see it more working for him than any other director.
All right, fair enough. Do not tell me you have the Blu-ray there, Michael. Do you have a Blu-ray of No One Will Save You? Is that what you just pulled off yourself?
No, I didn't pull that. But since we were talking about like alien films, a very underrated alien film you guys should check out is Color Out of Space with Nicolas Cage.
Oh yeah,
this movie is insane. Like,
was that on Netflix? I feel like that was on Netflix.
I think it is on Netflix. It was very low budget, so some of the CGI doesn't like look great, but I mean, it's basically like a meteor crashes and like aliens kind of like control the mind of Nicolas Cage's family, and of course, Nicolas Cage goes insane. I mean, who wouldn't want to see that?
Nicolas Cage going insane? Yeah, that's sign me up. I'll check that out.
Take my money.
Yeah, for some reason that was a Netflix original.
That sounds like the plot line of like Nicolas Cage's last 15 movies. Like
I know, right?
Something happens and he goes insane. Like that's generally Nick Cage's go to the last.
What's
10
that?
years.
What's that Nicolas Cage movie where the parents try to kill the kids? What
Mom
is that?
Mom and Dad.
Mom and Dad.
Mom and Dad. That's what I thought
That's
was
so
called.
good.
Mom and Dad.
Oh, I love that scene where he's smashing like the woman's head and he's singing the Hokey Pokey. He's like, "You put your right hand in." It's great. I love it.
That movie was wild. But going back to Spielberg for a second. Michael, Spielberg working on a UFO original movie. Do you think that this is perfect for Spielberg, or do you kind of wish he was working on something else?
Oh yeah, I'm all for it, man. I mean, Close Encounters is a classic. E.T. is one of my favorite films of all time. War of the Worlds is not great, unfortunately. But I think the last great like UFO project that Spielberg did, which is something that he didn't direct, but he was like a big part of behind the scenes as well as being a producer, was Super 8, which was directed by J.J. Abrams.
Right.
That in my opinion, because that movie does not get talked about a lot, even though it can be credited for kind of like jump starting Stranger Things. That is
Yeah.
such an underrated film. I don't know why most people don't talk about that film, even though it's kind of like another version of ET. So underrated. So I think Steven Spielberg's work that he did on that, because he did have a lot of creative control with J.J. Abrams. I'm all for it. I think Spielberg. Obviously, like what T said, I'd like to see a trailer and know a little bit more about it. But very rarely has Spielberg made an awful film. AI, but I think
1941.
yeah, that too. I should have said 1941. But I'm all for it, man. I think Spielberg is one of those directors that even when he makes an okay film, he still gives us a movie that is worth seeing in theaters.
Yeah, absolutely agree. You guys, T and Michael both bring up two movies, E.T. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Is there any way? Let's do an over or under on this one. Over or under 60% that this is either a sequel to Close Encounters or E.T. I'll start with UT. Do you think that Spielberg is working on an E.T. or Close Encounters sequel with this tie-in in any way, or do you think it's just going to be completely original? Over or under 60% on that?
I would say over 60% Close Encounters, under on ET. I don't think that there's any world where you make another ET.
No.
But Close Encounters, I could see like, all right, 50 years later, like whatever, and I don't want to say this out loud, but I've never seen Close Encounters. That was before my time. That was made in that was made
77.
Yeah, that was made
That's
before I
like
was born.
ultra early Spielberg.
Yeah.
Yes. So
That's
I
good, though.
never got. I mean, I've heard, and nothing tells me that it would be bad because of how revered it is. But I just never went back to watch it. But them making ET, I just there's no world in which anybody would want to see that.
No.
In my opinion, like I just don't. It doesn't translate to today. It could, because I mean, Super 8. I had to look up Super 8 to see if it was directed by Steven Spielberg, because it had him. Like as I was watching, I was like, "This is a Steven Spielberg movie. This had all of the makings of what made Steven Spielberg movies great."
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan, how about you? Over or under 60%?
I gotta say under on both, and like T, I have seen E.T. I have not seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But yeah, it's like, because for E.T., it's like there's only one actor from that movie who's still working in Hollywood, Drew Barrymore, and I don't think she's that interested, if at all. She's kind of downgraded her level of projects in favor of her talk show. As for Third Kind, I mean, again, I haven't seen that movie, so I guess I can't comment, but Spielberg, he doesn't do that many sequels, and it does. I don't know. He doesn't seem. I don't know. He just doesn't seem interested in making a sequel to Third Kind.
Fair enough. How about you, Michael?
I think there is a possibility that there could be a sequel to Third Kind. I mean, the way that movie ended, I mean, it has been a while since I've seen it. They didn't end it in a way where like it was like the aliens could never come back. But I don't think it has anything to do with E.T. because I think Spielberg has even said in a couple interviews E.T. should be left alone because the way that movie ended was perfect. I don't know if you saw this, Zach, but a couple years ago there was a commercial. It was for the Super Bowl. They had Henry Thomas come back, and it was like a 4-minute commercial. I'm like, you know what? Just that 4-minute commercial with Henry Thomas playing an older version of Elliot and having E.T. meet his kids. I think that was the closest and probably the way they should have gone with it. Doing like a full sequel to E.T. is, in my opinion, a pretty bad idea. There are just some movies that need to be left alone. Like how some people have said that they want to see a sequel to Sling Blade, the Billy Bob Thornton movie. That movie does not need a sequel. So I think Spielberg would probably make the right decision and either do something original, or if it's a sequel to Close Encounters, I'd honestly be interested. I mean, Richard Dreyfuss is still alive.
That's a good point. He is. So are you going over or under 60%?
Over 60% that there's a chance it might be Close Encounters, honestly.
I'm going to go under 60% for both. Because I think Ryan Ryan said it actually was E.T. I don't think they'll want to do a sequel to E.T. Or actually, no, it was T who said that you can't see a world where they do an E.T. sequel. And it's not that I don't see a world where they won't do an E.T. sequel. I don't think it's something that either Spielberg or the studios want to touch at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the studios want to touch it, but I don't think Spielberg wants to touch it. So I just can't see him giving in to that and wanting to do a sequel to E.T. And I also think that if it was a sequel to E.T., they wouldn't keep that under wraps for very long. I feel like that would be exposed pretty quickly, and this would be a bigger story.
Yeah.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I think, is a classic, but I don't think, like T mentioned and Ryan mentioned, it's not that well seen. Not everyone's seen it, and I don't know if a sequel to Close Encounters would be that hyped up. I don't think it's a Spielberg movie that people would be like going crazy over a sequel for. And so I think it is just an original idea. I don't think it's a sequel or a spinoff or a tie-in to any of his past movies. But with that said, with Spielberg working on a new UFO movie with the writer of the Jurassic Park, which that is the part that really gets me interested in this, is to see those pairings up once again. Do we buy or sell this UFO movie from Spielberg? I'm going to buy the concept at the moment. I think I'm looking forward to him going back into sci-fi with UFOs. He's on the fence. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough, man. This was a big thing that happened a couple days ago. Quentin Tarantino, famous director for many films, Pulp Fiction, Glorious Bastards, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Kill Bill, all those classic Tarantino films. Django Unchained. I love Django Unchained. He has famously made it known that he is only doing 10 movies. 10, no more, no less. He has this rule of his. Apparently, he thinks that some of the great directors went downhill after 10 films, and he doesn't want to become that, something like that. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but he's only got 10 films in him, and he's currently on his 10th film. Now, his 10th film was going to be called The Movie Critic, and very little was known about The Movie Critic. He's been working on it for a couple of years now. They were actually ramping up to film The Movie Critic. They were going to start shooting this thing in August. And a couple days ago, Tarantino came out here and said, you know what? This ain't it. This comes to us from The Hollywood Reporter. And they say Quentin Tarantino is going back to the drawing board for his 10th and final film. The auteur had been preparing to start shooting The Movie Critic this year, but is backing away from the project, sources tell The Hollywood Reporter. Tarantino had been honing The Movie Critic for months. Set in 1977 California, it initially drew inspiration from a cynical movie critic that the filmmaker grew up reading. But sources say it morphed along the way into a film that would feature Brad Pitt as Cliff Booth, the stuntman he portrayed in the Oscar-winning performance in Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It is unclear if this film was going to be a prequel or a 1970s set sequel to Hollywood, but in recent weeks, Tarantino had a change of heart and moved away from the film entirely. So that comes to us from The Hollywood Reporter, and I got to say my piece about this pretty extensively on Zach Milne Talks Live this past Wednesday. So I want to hear from you first, T. Quentin Tarantino, are you a fan of his, of him as a director? And do you think there's something behind why he canceled this movie? Why do you think he decided he's moving away from this as his final project?
So first of all, I'm not the biggest Tarantino fan. Like,
okay,
I didn't show up for Pulp Fiction when it first came. I think I watched Pulp Fiction for the first time like 5 years ago, after I got pressured into doing it because people would laugh at me because I never saw Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs or all of these like classic Tarantino movies. Wasn't that like it didn't, and maybe it was just the time that it came out that it was like super special and it was like it was so different than everything else. But when I watched it, I just was like, oh, I've seen this before. Maybe because people have redone like the premise of Pulp Fiction, not the premise, but like how he shot it and all of these different intertwining stories. So it wasn't super impressive to me. Just by reading or just by hearing you read that article, it sounds like there was a lot of moving pieces that it just like it started in one thing and it morphed into something else. And he probably just didn't feel comfortable like making this movie. And it also said Oscar. Did Brad Pitt win an Oscar for Once Upon a Time? Did I miss that? Did I miss that year's?
Yeah.
He did? Oh, wow.
Yeah, he did.
I must have missed that year's Oscars because I don't remember that at all. But yeah, like it just sounded like it could have been just too many different moving pieces, and he didn't feel comfortable with that being his final film. If they wanted to bring Brad Pitt back, maybe he just didn't think it was going to be that great of a role. I don't know, but Tarantino seems to be a weird dude. Don't know him personally, but he just seems to be uh, a unique person.
Yep.
that
Very.
just marches by the beat of his own drum. So if he said it wasn't good enough for him, I mean, it's the guy. He's starting Dust to Dawn. So like, I mean, take that for what it's worth. And I like Django. After rewatching it, I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I did. But I mean, he's a good director. He's a good director. Like his characters talk too much. Like he's a very dialogue driven, and like he thinks he's more.
I
feel like he thinks he's more witty than he is. Like he writes these characters and he says everybody talks fast. They kind of talk like him, and like I think he just impresses himself when he writes things, and then like he's just sitting there. I could just see him typing stuff, and he's just laughing like, "Oh, I'm gonna get him with this one." And after he finished that, he's like, maybe this is not for a modern crowd. I think he's still writing for the '90s crowd, because that was his heyday. That was when he was at his best in the '90s, early 2000s, the aughts, as they said in that other article. Just not my cup of tea, and no fault. I mean, he's revered. Everybody loves him, but just not my thing.
Yeah, no, totally fair, man. I mean, he is an acquired taste, and his films are very much his style, his tone, his humor. They're all pretty consistently that way, and maybe except for Jackie Brown a little bit. It kind of stepped out of his comfort zone a little bit with that one. But for the most part, they're pulpy action, like you said, fast-talking, witty kind of films. But one thing about Tarantino is he is probably one of the biggest perfectionists in Hollywood. I mean, he is someone who, if it's not good enough for him, it's not good enough at all. Ryan, do you think that had a little bit to play into why he decided to back off of this? I mean, like T mentioned, it does seem to have morphed into a bunch of different things. Maybe he felt like he was losing his handle on this thing. What do you think was the reason Tarantino decided that this is not his final movie and he's got to think of something else?
Well, I mean, far be it from me to try and, psychoanalyze his writing process. But that note about the perfectionism, it does sort of recall from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where they go to the film ranch. I forget the exact name, but they go to the film ranch, and in a little behind the scenes things, he talked about, the dogs and how he realized that he was going to have to do with dogs what Coppola did with helicopters in Apocalypse Now, where you'd have to have a dog in the background of every shot. Otherwise, the setting just wouldn't feel alive. So, yeah, the perfectionism, I can see perhaps maybe it's that, or maybe just, I don't know, he went in and realized that it's like, okay, I'm running out of ideas. I'm barely halfway through this. Maybe I should just cut my losses and maybe start from scratch.
Okay. That's an interesting perspective for sure. I mean, I didn't hear that behind the scenes story, so that's interesting. That sounds very Quentin Tarantino, though. So I definitely believe it. Michael, what about you? Are you bummed that he canceled this movie? Were you looking forward to it? Or do you think that this will be for the best, even though we have to wait a couple more years for Tarantino films to come out? Are you looking forward to seeing him do something other than the Movie Critic? And why do you think the Movie Critic wasn't what he was feeling?
Well, I actually am kind of okay with the fact that he decided to scrap it, because after hearing that it was going to somewhat tie into Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, even though I really did love that movie. Tarantino's my favorite director. If you guys can see, I have literally a Pulp Fiction poster right next to my Blu-rays. So I love Tarantino. He's my favorite director of all time. He, as T said, even though he's my favorite director, I can absolutely agree with what T said about the way he writes his dialogue and how it seems like he's writing it for himself, because that's absolutely what he's doing. Like absolutely, especially like like he said, From Dusk Till Dawn. I mean, that scene where Salma Hayek puts her foot in his mouth. It's like, yeah, he definitely wrote that for himself.
Yeah.
He wrote that for himself. I still love that movie. I think he's awesome in that movie, other than that scene and whatnot. But I think like every movie that he's done, even like Jackie Brown, which is kind of half and half, and Death Proof, I wasn't really a fan of a whole lot, but I still really like it. I think my favorite film of his is Reservoir Dogs. But I think like if he wants for his 10th film, I think this should be like maybe his most insane film, because Tarantino's not afraid to go above and beyond. He's jumped the shark in a good way so many times. Like he's not afraid to offend people, which I like. He's not like desensitized where he's like, no, we can't do this because it's not politically correct anymore. It's like just go for it. Like don't do it to the point where you just want to shock people. Like actually make sense of it, and he does for the most part, especially like in Inglourious Bastards. I mean, he did that perfectly. I mean, so I think like for his last film, I think his last film should be, instead of having it be a sequel, because Kill Bill was the only sequel he ever did, which a lot of people were surprised he did, because Tarantino has even said he doesn't like to do sequels, because he said like doing sequels kind of kills like the magic of the first film to begin with, and I kind of agree with him in that sense. So I think his last film should be something original, and I think it should be the most insane thing he's ever written. I think that is probably the best way to end it, and Tarantino will be looked at as one of the best, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I read that apparently Kill Bill was one big script and he had to split it into two, because if you put Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, he's already got 10 films. But he counts that as one film, so he says he has 9. But he's already hit 10 technically, so technically this will be his 11th film. But yeah, I think that he's probably gotten in his head a little bit too, because if he does have this rule of 10 movies, like you were kind of saying, where it has to be his most insane, his craziest, his best movie he's ever made, I feel like he's probably feeling that too. And in that way, I feel like he's probably really put a lot of unneeded pressure on himself, because I mean, show of hands, who here believes that Tarantino is really only going to do 10 movies in his lifetime after this one?
I believe him.
I believe him.
I mean,
really?
What?
Okay.
Again, he's not. He did a whole interview. He's talked about how he's not just going completely poof away from Hollywood. The guy wants to write. I mean, the guy has written 2 books already. One was a novelization of Once Upon a Time. The other was a book, kind of essentially just about movies. And as T said, the book was kind of written for him. But he talked about all the movies he loves, especially from the 70s. Well, exclusively from the 70s, but. Yeah, I mean, and the dude's a dad. I mean, so the guy, I mean, he has motivation to wind down, and he has shown himself willing to dabble in non-film related creative projects. So, I believe him.
Yeah, he has written a lot of scripts too. I mean, he wrote the script for Natural Born Killers. He wrote the script for True Romance. He did a little bit of the script for The Rock, which is actually which makes The Rock even better. He also did a little bit of he also wrote like a little bit of From Dusk Till Dawn, which he obviously starred in. So he's a fantastic writer, and he's shown that he can do a lot with just not directing, from writing. So I agree with Ryan in that sense too.
I think he'll definitely stay busy for sure, but I think unless he passes before his time, like he's only in like his mid 40s, he might be approaching 50.
No,
he's like in his late 50s.
Yeah, he's close to.
I don't think he's 60.
I think he's like
60 than he is 50.
Look, I'm gonna look up his age right now. I don't.
Yeah, I think he's like 50. I think he's 56.
Is he really?
I think
he's younger than that.
No,
Tarantino age.
There's no way me and him are the same age. There's
Okay. He is 61. I was vindicated.
He's 61. Really?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I thought he was much younger than that.
Yeah, he was born
good for
March
him.
27 of 1963. So he just had his birthday.
Wow. Okay, so he is okay. He's in his 60s. Interesting. Okay, still, I'm gonna stick with my point. I think that he's gonna keep busy, but he's also an auteur. He's also a filmmaker who I think is going to look at movies and have an idea of how to make a better one, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like he's not going to just let the movie landscape pass him by. If he's not thrilled with what's happening, I feel like he'll be like, I need to put something else out there. Like, I'm just of the mindset of never say never. I think he'll take a break for sure, but I still think when he's 70, he could still make a movie. Even when like Martin Scorsese's in his 80s, right? And he's still making movies. I think Quentin Tarantino has tons of time to come back to the movie scene. So I don't think that this will be his final movie. I do think he'll come back with something else. But regarding his final movie, another thing that people are kind of talking about with this is he's talked about interest in doing a Star Trek film, and many fans have wanted him to do Kill Bill Volume 3. So backing off of the Movie Critic, do you think there's any chance that this could turn into him doing a Star Trek movie that he's always dreamed of doing? Or do you think Kill Bill Volume 3 is on the table? I'll start with you, Michael, since you're the Tarantino fanatic here. Do you see him doing either one of those, or do you think he'll do something still completely original?
I have heard rumors about Kill Bill 3. From every interview that I've seen of Tarantino, I don't think he's ever really talked about it before. I don't think Kill Bill 3 is really on the table. I know there was like a rumor that Zendaya was supposed to be a part of it, but like nothing has ever came about it. As far as a Star Trek film, I don't know. I mean, Tarantino has surprised me before. I mean, he made a vampire film. Nobody really expected that. I don't know, honestly. I mean, there's a quite possibility, even though Tarantino has expressed that he's not interested in like doing like big live action, like superhero comic book type stuff, even though Star Trek doesn't really count. But a lot of people could consider it kind of close in that same range of filmmaking. So I don't really think that'll happen. But if it does, then I guess we're going to get a hyper violent Star Trek film.
What do you think, T? Do you think there's any chance that those two movies are on the table for Tarantino, or do you think there's no shot?
So I don't think there's a shot for Kill Bill 3. I think that was a moment in time. I heard this in the day aroma too, and it sounds great. Like that sounds like that'll be fun. She's really hot right now too, so it would match up. But I could definitely see the Star Trek thing, because I've heard those grumblings of him wanting to do a Star Trek ever since like that first remake of Star Trek. Like he's been talking about he wanted. Actually, I think after Into Darkness, the Khan one, the Benedict Cumberbatch one.
Yeah,
He's wanted to do one after that. So I could see that happening before I could see a Kill Bill 3. I would not want to see a Kill Bill 3. That was like after Kill Bill Volume 1, I thought Volume 2 was okay, but I thought Volume 1 was just like the apex of like action 90s or 2000s action. I thought that was just fantastic. I loved Kill Bill Volume 1, but I don't want to see a part 3. I don't think that works as well as he think it would, or anybody thinks it would. Like a lot of people dream cast and dream like they dream up ideas for Kill Bill Volume 3. I just don't think it will work as well as Volume 1 and 2 did.
How about you, Ryan? Do you think either of those films he could go out on?
Well, I mean, again, I don't have any opinion on Kill Bill 3 because, again, I've seen snippets of volumes 1 and 2, but I've never actually sat down and watched them both. So I clearly don't have as much a connection with those films as T does. That said, I am at least intellectually curious about a Star Trek film by Quentin Tarantino, if only because of just how stylistically polar opposite those types of movies are from what Quentin Tarantino makes. Because like Star Trek is at best a mild PG-13. Like the Star Trek 09 film is probably the most PG-13 any of those films have ever been. So I'd be interested to see an R-rated like Star Trek movie shot on film, I mean, I guess, a Star Trek film would be interesting, I guess.
Yep, we'll have to wait and see what he ends up doing. But all we know for sure is that the Movie Critic will not be coming out, will not be getting made, and he will take a couple more years. I guess that also adds to his age, taking a couple more years to come up with another idea before he starts filming. With that said, do we buy or sell the Movie Critic being scrapped by Tarantino and doing something new? I'm going to buy it because I trust his instincts. And if he's going to truly have this be his last movie, I want it to be great. And if this wasn't going to be great, I don't want it. So I'm going to buy it. Ryan's on the fence there a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, fair enough. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you guys for joining, being members. As always, please tell people where they can find you. Let's start with you, T.
Oh, you can find me at Have You Seen That with T on YouTube and Have You Seen That on Letterboxd. Today, I should be dropping my Abigail review, and I will not be dropping the Rebel Moon 2, the Scar Giver review, because it is just terrible. That's all I have to say about that.
I am half an hour into Rebel Moon Part 2.
Couldn't get
I had to
into
take
it.
a little break.
Yeah.
Oh boy, I'm
Well-
going to review that movie. So
Yeah, we'll see. I might review it. I might finish it. Who knows if I will. But next up, Michael, tell them where they can find you.
So you can just find me right where it says right here, Michael Entity. I don't post reviews as much as I want to because I'm always busy. So I usually post reviews a little bit late. Same with T. I'm not going to review Rebel Moon Part 2 either, even though I'm a big Zack Snyder fan. Just can't get into it. But I'm also coming out with my horror film Heresy. The trailer's on my YouTube channel, and you can even get tickets to go see it if you're willing to drive out or fly out to Arizona. So we're going to have to do that for you, Zach. I'll have to pay for a plane ticket for you.
I'd be down, man. Yeah, I'll link that down in the description, by the way, along with your channel. I'll put that link to your teaser trailer there because I watched
Appreciate
it.
that.
Very well done, dude. Very well done.
Thank
I'm
you,
looking
man.
forward to it. Ryan, how about you?
you can find me on YouTube at Movie Reviews with Ryan Lane. I publish about 2 movie reviews a week. You can also find me on Letterboxd, same thing, at Movie Reviews with Ryan Lane. And yeah, I've got a Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare review coming out later today, so be on the lookout for that.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys once again for being here, for being members. All their channel links are down in the description below. Definitely check them out. And we will see you guys again next week. Take care.
All right. Bye.